Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
Ashley Wilson is the co-founder of HouseItLook LLC and Bar Down Investments LLC, two family-owned and operated companies. After leaving pharma years ago, she began flipping houses with her husband and father. She now controls over 225 units and has completed over 13 flips. On today's episode, we chat a lot about how to run your business from your phone, why communication is the number one skill in this business, the best apps to use, and how she moved into syndications. Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
And you are coming back here on the Real Estate Investor Show. We're excited to have you back on our show and all the neat stuff we're up to with helping women investors, become more financially free and live a balanced life. That's our mission. That's where our, mission is, to kind of help the ladies out there that are growing their business, growing their real estate, and also want to be connected to other women doing really, really cool stuff. So, and a great lead into that is Ashley. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have Ashley on our show. We're going to get into her story. She's got an amazing story and how she started and where she is today. And she'll kind of share a lot about that when we're going to be asking her some kind of engaging questions to kind of get inside her amazing mind. Before we go there, Andressa, what's coming up for you? How are things going? How's life treating you?
Very well. I want to share with you guys, this past week, I traveled to be part of what they call Global Mastermind event, where entrepreneurs from around the country, we also actually had some people from outside the country, Canada. So they came over to mastermind around the business. And we had different speakers, but one of them was talking about a story that we all know about the little boys that got stuck inside the cave in Thailand, and how did that relate to business. So I wanted to share 3 business lessons that he mentioned that is related to that. So for those of you that don't know the lesson, basically one of the boys, 11, 12 years old, it was his birthday, and they went inside the cave to celebrate, and started raining. And the more that it rained, more the water raised and pushed them even more and more and more inside. It was about 1 week after that the first contact was made. He connected so many different countries and specialists in diving and how to resolve that problem. I remember I was getting so much anxiety about that. And so the guy was talking about three main topics about how we can relate. How did they survive, and how was that a successful story? So the first one is to be calm. In our business, sometimes we get very frustrated and we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So he said, be calm. That's what allowed them to survive, because they meditated a lot. The teacher was Buddha, a monk for a long time. And so he taught the kids how to meditate and be calm. The second thing that he said is leaders eat last. So he put all the kids first and put when you have in perspective to your business, your clients and your lenders, they all get paid first. So that's what it made them also survive. But the last thing is either you swim or you die. In their case was literally that. They had to learn how to swim and swim in like muddy water in order for them to survive. And there's no difference in business. Either you swim or you die. So that's like put me in so much, awareness and perspective. Yeah. What would you do? Either you do this or you die, basically. So it put a lot of sense of urgency in me, but at the same time, awareness about where do I want to really be and take my business to.
That's great. It's awesome that you take the time to do that, and it sounds like there's a bunch of lessons, but I think that's really important. And kind of it's really critical, right, in terms of growth. And so kudos to you for taking the time. And you were super like efficient with everything else, you have going on. Cause I got emails from you. I got Slack updates cause we're working on a bunch of things together, and you were right on it. And you were in present to what you're up to. So
you just gotta get it done. I was like, I gotta swim or I'm gonna die. So.
Well, I resonate with the calm one. I really like that one. That's the one I like. Well, awesome. Very cool. So Ashley, thanks again for being on our show, and thanks for being with us and all the ladies listening to the episode. So tell us a little bit about yourself, but most importantly in that story, or in that kind of, as you kind of, came to real estate investing, what propelled you, what compelled you, so to speak, to get involved in real estate investing? And, what was that path, what did it look like for you, and, where you are today?
Absolutely. So thank you both again for having me. I'm very honored that I was asked to be on this podcast, because I listen to your podcast, and I hope I can provide as much insight as that has been provided to me over all the different episodes you've had to date. So with respect to your question, back in 2009, I was working for a pharmaceutical company, and I had been ever since graduating from college. I worked within pharmaceuticals. I worked in clinical R&D, which basically means that I was managing studies prior to them getting FDA approval and being out on the market. So I had a lot of project management background experience, coupled with the fact that I also got my master's in leadership development, which is separate from organizational leadership. A lot of people tend to think that's what that program encompasses. However, that's not the goal of the program. The goal of the program is actually for people who are already CEOs or entrepreneurs themselves. And it talks about how to run your business efficiently, effectively, with also a business management component of it as well. So it was quite interesting and very applicable for what I do today. So it's funny how all these pieces, when you add them up, were really the foundation to what I'm doing today. But at the time, I didn't see that's where, I was going. So in 2009, my husband had actually always been extremely interested in real estate. He actually had a different career. He was a professional hockey player. So at the time, he was playing hockey, and he was trying to figure out what he was going to do after hockey and how we can invest our money. And it kept circling back to real estate. I think we can all agree that real estate provides a lot of advantages that other investment, specifically retirement investment strategies, do not. So there are opportunities with hedging against inflation. There are tax benefits. You are investing in a real estate backed asset. There are tax benefits as well. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we really needed to continue to look into the different components of real estate investing to figure out what our connection would be with real estate investing, because there are a lot of different aspects of real estate investing. It's not just a one size fits all approach. There's passive versus active. And then within each, there are different fields that you can invest to. So we knew we wanted to do it, but we were just trying to figure out where we were going to get started. Fast forward a few years. Sorry, I should back up. We did at that time buy a rental property. So we did short-term and long-term rentals at that time. Prior to Airbnb, VRBO, which is vacation rental by owner, was the more popular platform before Airbnb launched and did a huge media campaign. So we actually utilized VRBO for our short-term rental and did very successfully with that. And of course, when you do the first thing you do successfully, it just becomes almost like an addiction. Like you just want more. So we were trying to figure out what else can we do. So my dad, he actually is a general contractor. He's had his own business for over 45 years. He has partnered with other people who have flipped properties. He's partnered with developers. He's worked on everything from Section 8 to multi-million-dollar mansions, commercial properties. I mean, literally, he has done it all. For anyone in Pennsylvania, he painted Dorney Park. So that is,
That is so cool. That is so cool.
something that is a little bit of a claim to fame. But he just has a lot of vast experience on which we could draw from. So when my husband was still playing, his career took him to Europe, and he was playing over in Russia and all throughout Europe. I actually stopped working in pharmaceuticals and approached my husband about, instead of waiting to partner with my father once my husband was retired, if I could partner with my dad then, and we could work out all the growing pains while we had another stable income, that when my husband retired, the new income that we were producing through whatever real estate means we ended up deciding to go with would substitute for the income that was lost from my husband's career. So that's exactly what happened, fortunately for us. We started investing in flipping. We started flipping. So my father and I partnered. My dad was the boots on the ground, so to speak, and I did everything that you can do from afar. So I know for anyone who invests from afar, they've probably read David Greene's long distance real estate investing book. That's exactly what I was doing and have been doing for the past 4 years, but I was doing it from Europe. So we had to contend with time zones, huge time difference, but I had been used to that because I had just come from working in pharmaceuticals, and I was doing global clinical trials. So not only was I working on trials within the US and the FDA, but I was working with trials in India and all over Europe. So I had already gone through the growing pain of learning how to work from a different time zone, which proved to be extremely beneficial for our business.
I love what you're saying, that at that time you didn't know what those lessons were for, about your masters, and then how flexible you were to do your pharmaceutical sales. It kind of like it built you up to have the skills that are necessary right now to do what you're doing. So sometimes people say, oh, I have experience in X, Y, and Z. How can I translate that to what I'm doing right now? In my case, I had a major in journalism. I interviewed people at that time. So when I started real estate, I was like, where on earth I'm going to use that? Well, here I am interviewing people. So it's
and I was a psych major.
Right. So it's just like, and then you do door-to-door sales and you gain experience that. You just don't know. I think it was Steve Jobs that said once, looking back, you can connect the dots, but you can never connect the dots why you were so close to it. So I want to dig more into how you were able to be in Europe and still build and manage a business. We all know that even like in person is so challenging to create all of that. What do you think, in your opinion, was the foundation that you had to build in order to create a successful business from afar?
The two most important things of building a business from afar are communication and leveraging technology. The first point is communication, and communication is the foundation for any business. If you are successful in a business, it's because your communication is successful. If you are failing in a business, most likely it's due to failing communication. And I think people often assume that others understand what they mean when they say a certain sentence, and they assume they'll take the proper action based off of that communication. But still today we have breakdowns in communication, and you're always looking for ways in which to improve the communication. And now we're all located in Pennsylvania, which is pretty ironic that you would think the communication would get better because we're oftentimes face to face. But even face to face, there can be communication breakdowns. So it's really important that people spend a lot of time really thinking about what they're saying. And I think that when you're in your own business, oftentimes it's overlooked on documenting what you're actually saying. So if you have a communication with someone, whether it be over the phone or in person, you just think that someone's going to remember that. Well, people not only have a lot of things on their mind when it comes to work, but they also have always things going on personally too. And it's really hard to remember every single thing, especially when you are running your own business. So it's really important, I think, to have some sort of way to document decisions. We actually have weekly meetings, very formal meetings in which we take minutes. It's not like I'm going to need to reference these minutes 10 years from now. However, if someone needs to reference the meetings a couple days from now, the decision is well documented on the minutes from that meeting. So that's one example or one criteria I think that is critical for running any business, whether from afar or not. Specifically for running from afar, I think you should leverage technology. I think there are a lot of great apps that you can use. I mentioned before that my husband was a hockey player while we were in Europe. So I was often at games, at night in Europe where my father was in the middle of a work day and I needed to be able to answer his questions. Well, don't kid yourself. I wasn't bringing a laptop with me to his games.
I brought just gonna ask that. Like, were you sitting down on the audience, like with your laptop? Like,
no, absolutely not. I had my phone, and there are a lot of great apps and a lot of free apps that you can use to, run your business. You can literally run your business from your phone, which I think is amazing. And today, I know I kind of stopped with the flipping, but we have gone on since then. We're now doing apartment syndications. And one of the apartments that we're working on now is in Texas. It's 124 units, and I'm managing the construction renovation. It's a value add apartment building, and we are co-sponsoring a deal with another group. One of my responsibilities in the sponsorship is managing the construction. Once again, I am all over the place. Right now, I'm actually at my in-laws in Canada, and I still need to be able to be available and manage this renovation because it's going on as I'm sitting here talking with you. So once again, I have my phone. Now, I also brought my computer up here because I'm, just need to work as well. And it is easier with a keyboard. I think we can all agree. However, when I'm out running errands, I can do anything from my phone. Even in the grocery store, if someone asks me, what did this, what was this plan for this unit? What were we planning? I can pull up that Excel spreadsheet and reference that unit number and know, okay, we're pulling the floors, we're replacing the fixtures. I'll know immediately because of the wonderful apps that are available to us today.
Ashley, what's your favorite and you think most underutilized app that's in your business or that you use for your business?
Well, I guess I should say a communication app, right? Because I just said that communication is one of the most important things.
It could be any app. I think so. There's so many wonderful apps, and it's so hard to stay updated on all of these great, apps that are happening. So yeah, I was curious to hear from you to see what maybe is a little underutilized, but you love.
I actually have a few apps that I really love. I really am a huge proponent of Google products. I think Google is an innovator when it comes to making everyone's life easier and for free, primarily. Most of the time it's for free. So I really like Google Sheets. I like Google Docs and Google Slides because of the integration factor. It's very easy to work with their documents. So I think that I don't know if that's necessarily underutilized or people don't know that it's out there. With respect to underutilized, anything to do with like a document scanner. So I have actually have a couple different apps that I use on scanning documents. So what's great about these apps is instead of just taking a picture and having a JPEG file, you can actually PDF the document, and then you can edit the document within that app. So not only could I type in, for example, if I'm at the grocery store and I need to sign off on an agreement of sale, right? I could pull up this agreement of sale from my email inbox, pull it over to this PDF document scanner program, and I can type in all the information. I can type in my offer. I can type in my, name, address, whatever. And then also I can actually sign the document and then save it as a PDF and email directly from that PDF app. I think that is amazing. The fact that you can do that, the fact that we're getting rid of paper. I'm a very environmental friendly type person. So removing our carbon footprint, I think, is critical for the world. And that's another app that I really enjoy using. And then also too, I know we like Slacker that you can use for communication. We also use GroupMe too. GroupMe I like because it has a calendar feature. Mm-hmm. So you can actually also schedule different events within the group. But there are a lot of different apps. It's just a matter of what you find in terms of the interface is the easiest for you. There's absolutely no reason, though, that people shouldn't be using apps. They're very easy to use. Most of the time, they're free. And it's just a really good communication tool to utilize amongst your team.
And what is the name of the app that you're scanning?
Okay, so I have to look it up. Because I have two, but the one is definitely better. So it's called Scanner Pro.
Scanner Pro, cool.
I actually got it when it was free. I think it's $3 now, but it's the only app that I would say that you should 100% pay for. But it's brilliant. I've probably used it for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, and I think that when you look, the cost is so low in terms of how much time you're going to save it. Just saving the printing and the environmental side as well. But like, you are totally free. You don't need a printer anymore, and you can make the transactions quicker. I know for a fact that as quick as I can work and submit my offer, faster I can get an answer. And higher are my chances to be one of the first ones to get an offer in. So like, time for me, when you save time, it's totally worth. I want to touch base on the fact that you work with your family. And right? And I remember you were part of one of the meetups where we were talking about it. And I clearly remember you saying, independently if they are family members or not, you need to ask yourself, would I work with this person? If the answer is no, so it's just like, it doesn't really matter if that person is part of your family or not. So people shouldn't avoid working with family members based on just the fact that they are part of your family. But I know you have a great relationship with your family and you have a dynamic. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but you guys get along and resolve the problems. And once I saw your dad talking about you and your brother and how you guys sometimes get into, heated conversations. My question is, how do you separate, say, hey, I really want this door here or not, and then say, are we going to have dinner together?
That's actually kind of how it goes, except we yell a little bit more on the door part of that example. So we can be quite comical. My husband's always said that he doesn't really understand how we can do. He works in the business too, but he is not in the same capacity that my brother and my dad work. My husband is the realtor on the flipping side, and with our apartment syndications, for now it's just my husband and myself doing the apartment syndication. So it's definitely interesting because we all have a different style of communication. And I would say between my brother, my dad, and myself, we're just very passionate people. Like, I'm shocked we don't have more like Italian in us, because, you know, we're very passionate, you know, passionate people. And I like to say that we're like the Osbournes meets Chip and Joanna. Like, I don't know if anyone watched the reality show of the Osbournes, but that family truly loves each other. But the way in which they communicate is not necessarily normal for most people, or at least how we think of communication as normal. So the point is that I think with my brother and my father, we just have the ability to be very honest with each other. And then I think we know that there is more to life than work. The other day we got in a little bit of an argument between the three of us, and it became extremely heated. I was actually the mediator this time, which is definitely rare. Normally I'm in the trenches with them, but I was mediating between my father and my brother. And one of the things I said to them is, before you guys explode on each other, not just in this situation, but in any situation, just take a step away from each other and just think of something, whatever your trigger is. The fact that, you know, there are people starving still, like children starving in this world. Like, there are bigger issues than, you know, for this example, it was like whether or not we put wainscoting in the correct room. That was the example, you know? So, that's really like first world problems, and we really need to have some perspective. And to your point that you said early on in the show, Andressa, about being calm, that's about just being calm, like resetting your internal self and saying, okay, this is my trigger. My trigger is the fact that there are children starving. So I'm going to approach this person knowing in the back of my head that, you know, there are bigger issues than whether or not we put wainscoting on the right room. And then if that person also comes at that same approach too, because I just said, you know, to both my brother and my father, that you guys need to do this exercise the next time you guys communicate with each other, that it's the 10,000 hour rule, or however you want to say it, which is the more you repeat and the more you do things, the more it becomes habit. So if they do that every single time, then, you know, hopefully we'll get to a better place. But we are far from perfect. I'll be the first person to admit that. And I think if anyone watched us for a day, I think they would say, oh my God, I could never, you know, communicate that way between the three of them, because they're just very, you know, passionate. So
yeah. I think what you're saying too, Ashley, is so important, especially when you work with your family. I mean, we've had our parents, both of our sets of parents, invest in our business, but I wouldn't say it's similar, you know, in what you're saying in terms of you guys are actually executing projects. But my husband and I work together, and you know, something that Andressa and I have been through these workshops through Landmark Education. They talked about a term called it's called already listening. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but in a nutshell, it's basically that you're talking, Ashley, and I've had so much interaction with you, and I think I know you so well that I know what you're about to say. And that happens all the time with like your best friends, your family, people that like you just know you don't even need them to say anything. But the flip side of the challenge of that, especially if you're working with them, is that you just have you constantly judge what they're about to say as though you think you know what they're going to say. And it's just this little cycle of judgment. And then it just becomes, you start to get, you know, on each other's, you know, nerves. And then it just can blow up into assumptions, and you know what happens with that. So my point in saying that is I think it's so helpful, like you're saying, okay, let's step back, you know, and my background's a little bit of the social work and mediation. I think that's so helpful. And when you're working with people, especially your family, your spouse, anyone, emotions get involved so fast, so quickly because of that kind of like, well, I know what they're going to do. I know my brother. I know my dad. I know them. Well, you do, but you still need to look at them and communicate as though you're working through this issue as though it's only this issue. So I think that's such a great point, and I wanted to mention that just because of the the work that I've done, as well as just working with your family. It can get a little dicey, so, but probably very rewarding too, I would think. You guys are able to work together, build together. I think that's really neat too.
It's definitely has its pros and cons, and overall it definitely has more pros for us. I wouldn't say that everyone should work with their family if they don't feel that they could have the same success.
Sure.
The way Andressa started talking about this topic, where she mentioned that I said you should first ask yourself, if this person wasn't your family, would you decide to work with them? That is an honest question you need to ask yourself, and they need to ask yourself. And to your point, Liz, you don't know what they would say. They might have a different response. You might think you can work with them, and they might think that they can't work with you. So you need to be respectful of that. And, further elaborating on what you were just saying, Liz, I actually attended a listening seminar, and it was talking about how people jump to make those assumptions because our brain is actually exhausting. The amount of energy that is needed to fully listen to someone without coming up, trying to think of a response before they're finished speaking, trying to figure out where they're going, it's exhausting. So our brain actually takes shortcuts to figure out what the person is saying so we can process information faster and more efficiently. But if you actually truly listen to someone and not think of what to say next, a perfect example to think about is when you go to an all-day seminar, everyone says they're exhausted. Why are they exhausted? Because they're actually listening. They're not thinking about what to say next. But if you had a conversation with someone all day, you wouldn't be as exhausted because your brain is actually finding shortcuts to work and process the information and get you to say something next to keep the dialogue moving. But if you're just sitting there listening, processing, trying to learn from what's being said, it is exhausting. It really is exhausting, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. It is the right thing to do. And oftentimes we do make those jumps. And I think could be an opportunity for a breakdown in communication as well.
Yeah. I love what you're saying about the breakdown in communication. And we always think, okay, a breakdown is an opportunity to break through and create a new possibility. It's totally true. Every time that I come back from a mastermind or an event, I am completely exhausted. And I thought, what? I was there, learning. I don't understand why I'm so like this. And that is such a good point that you're making in terms of how can we all stop, look at the situation, look at the breakdown, and create a new possibility. So next time we will handle differently.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. And Jess and I experienced that working together. My emotions have been heightened lately. So I think, but it's so helpful, right? To just keep communicating and saying, hey, this is where I'm coming from. And then a breakthrough happens. So no, that's awesome. Ashley, curious, you made the transition, you and your husband, I guess, made the transition from flipping to apartment syndication, and that, again, it doesn't mean that everyone can do that, but I think a lot of people can make different shifts in this business, different niches, different, call it real estate investing segments of the business. So you made that shift. I'm curious, what would you have loved to tell yourself now that you've made that shift, right? And you went from flipping, very, very beautiful, expensive homes to you went real deal, like 100 plus apartments, units. So you didn't mess around with the small stuff. No.
No.
So I'm curious, like, what would you have loved to tell yourself now, knowing what you know, to that person who's about to make that shift? Whether it's a challenge or a learning or advice, like, what would you tell that Ashley then?
Wow. Gosh, that is a great question. Everyone always says that you should just add a zero. So if you're doing 10 apartments, why not do 100 apartments, or why not do 1,000 apartments? You're doing the same process, but it's just a little bit more work. But I also think too that I personally think that you need to go through the process to learn each step of the way. There are some people that have been very successful just making a jump right into apartment syndication and going into 100 plus units. But I think that's very rare. And I also think too that you're just like adding a zero on terms of the profit can multiply exponentially, so can your problems. And I don't think that if you jump into a situation like that, that you might be able to handle those problems. Whereas if you took a little bit more patience in learning the process, you'd actually be more successful. So I think being patient is something that should be a characteristic that is valued in whether you partner with someone or you're looking for a mentor. You should be looking for someone who really knows a lot about a lot of different things, because it's not just finding someone who was uber successful when they made this huge leap and didn't have anything to fall back on. Because right now we're in a time where the market is still continuing to push upwards. And that should be troubling for everyone, because this is the longest rebound from a recession that we've ever had in US history. So this should be alarming to everyone, because a lot of people right now, it's my personal opinion, are successful because they are playing the appreciation game, and they are not making sound investments, and they're getting very lucky. And I think when we have a correction, whatever the correction may be, will definitely spotlight all of those people who were not conservative in their approach. I am a more conservative investor through all aspects of real estate. I think you guys would find that the offers I make for flipping side are embarrassing, and they are embarrassing. I think if you're not embarrassed by your offer, you're offering too much.
I agree.
So I also too, I look for houses that have multiple out strategies as opposed to just a flip. That's another conservative approach I take. I really build up my numbers. I factor in a huge contingency on the sale for concessions that we're going to need to make. I put the lowest number on the resale that I think that we could get in a down market time. I mean, there are a lot of conservative approaches that I take, but that is why we have flipped now. I think it's 11 that we've sold. We have 13 flips that we're doing. And we've made 5 figures on every single house. That is because I personally believe, because we've taken a very conservative approach. So those are things you learn along the way. And I think people are very aggressive when they first learn about real estate, and they're just very excited and hungry. And I'm not saying to take that away. Like, that is a completely different conversation. I think everyone should be hungry. I think everyone should be excited. I think there's enough business out there in the world not to feel that if you aren't banging down someone's door that you're not going to get the deal because someone else is. There's another deal out there. Let's be honest. But I also think too that you need to be patient in your approach. And I think that you don't need to be so direct in your approach. One perfect example, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Matt on his Raising Private Capital book directly one-on-one, but one of the things that impressed me so much about his book is, while I was reading the book, I thought to myself, this is incredible. I mean, he has a diverse experience, like diverse background, even though it's all within like real estate investing specifically for this book. It's very diverse in his approach and what he's going after and the deals he's looking for. And that is something that I actually really respect. when I look at different people as mentors or, someone I look up to. And at the end of the book, Matt said something to the point where, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously I don't have the book in front of me, but he said something to the point where, maybe I should have been more focused on this one thing or that one thing, because then I would have become like an expert on that one thing. But what's funny is that I don't know if Matt realized he became an expert in raising private capital for all different things. And he is
yes,
an expert in that. And that doesn't mean he's not an expert in single family or multifamily or, whatever. He literally became an expert in raising private capital across all of these different platforms, which a lot of other people can't say they can do. So to me, that's more impressive, because when the market turns and certain real estate investments become more advantageous than others, who is going to be ahead in the game? It's people like Matt. It's not people who put all their eggs in one basket and focused on one particular thing.
It's funny you say that too. I mean, that's a whole other, tangent I can go into, but because I think when people ask me what we've learned the most, like if I had to talk to myself, 14 years ago when we started with our first duplex, like what would you tell that person? And the first thing, or one of the always, I was on a podcast yesterday, the thing I actually said about what's my biggest learning is that I really do wish we would have focused more, because we did get involved with so many different things. And I wish we had a more conservative approach when we started. But to your point, Ashley, it's interesting because you kind of have to appreciate your process, because your process actually then creates what you know. So It's a really good point. It's a really good perspective. I'll definitely share that with Matt. He doesn't listen to our show, but I'll make sure he listens to this one. But
he does listen.
I know he does.
He should listen.
I know he should have learned something. He'll learn something. But I think your point's well taken, and I think the ladies listening too, we sometimes judge ourselves. I think women judge themselves a lot. I think all people do. I think women are really tough on themselves, at least the ladies I talk to. And we often say, well, I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. But yet sometimes the things we could have done differently, to your amazing point you just shared, is that it really creates the person we are, and the experience that we have in and of itself then, propels kind of where we're headed. So appreciate that insight. It's really a really great point.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think we tend to be too hard on ourselves, and I think that gives us the drive that we all have. I mean, everyone that's in this community is extremely driven, and I mean, just beyond impressive resumes, like just the backgrounds and what everyone brings to the table is incredible. And I think oftentimes we should be a little bit more proud and not so. Right. And when people are, speaking to their accolades and what they've accomplished, I think we should be like, yeah, girl, like good for you.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing what you're doing, and not so judgmental and saying, oh, well, she's a little cocky. Like, do you really think she did that? Like, check the judgment at the door and be like completely supportive. Because when you have people encouraging you, I mean, you can really change the world.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. So where are you headed next? Are you guys still flipping? Are you really just focused on, apartment syndications? Like where's your, business headed?
So our business is definitely headed with apartment syndications. What we are positioning ourselves as is a company that people can go to for management of value add projects. So what we would like to do is co-sponsor with other syndicators and manage the whole construction piece of it. There are a lot of people who love syndications and want to go into syndications, but they're a little overwhelmed by the construction component of it. And we aren't. Plus, we understand real estate investing. So I think that provides a duality that maybe is not so common within the apartment syndication world. A lot of people think they know what they're doing. They rely on the property managers and they rely on the GCs that they hire, but they have no one on their team that is managing and looking out what's for the best interest of the passive investors and the rest of the syndication team. So right now, for example, the apartment that I was talking about in Texas, we are co-sponsors on the deal. And we brought some of our own investors into the deal as well, which is another component we can add. But we're entirely running the construction piece of this. So we're, we walk the property, we QC all of the estimates that are received. I've questioned a lot of estimates. I've gotten a lot of estimates to go down significantly. I've prioritized what we're doing, and it all coincides with the underwriting. So our overall budget for one particular example, we have a rebuild of a fire unit, and I was able to get that estimate down by almost 10%. So we'll see what we can finish at, but those are things that I think create a lot of opportunity for different syndicators that they don't currently have in their wheelhouse. A lot of people are really concerned on the day-to-day operations, and they think of the capital expenditures piece of the new roofs. For listeners who don't know what capital expenditures are, but the major ticket items of the renovation, those items, they just think, oh, okay, it's budgeted, so we don't have to worry about it. Well, what happens when a pipe bursts? What happens when a roof that you didn't plan on doing, all of a sudden your contractor says, no, that should have been included from the beginning. I don't know why you don't have that included. It's an extra set of eyes. It's people who understand syndications, and also too, we have our own investors. So I think we bring a different side to apartment syndications that is not out there currently.
That's great. I mean, I can tell you too, what you're saying is so helpful, because you start to get into these bigger buildings. I mean, we're renovating, not we, but our team is renovating a building in North Carolina. And, you think, okay, apartments need X, Y, and Z. Well, if there's 40 of them, it's just the numbers just go up. So one thing that you think is going to cost X dollars is really just like literally times 40, 50, 60. It's just the numbers are a lot of zeros, and that can cost you a lot. So your point's well taken. And,
absolutely,
the ladies listening too, it's like, okay, if you want to get into apartments, or you have an apartment, you have multifamilies, you want to grow your portfolio, you not only have to raise the money, that's certainly important, but, more importantly, quite honestly, is then managing the money and the building. And what you're saying is so powerful, because it makes all the difference, really, quite honestly, because you're going to save the dollars and make sure you're getting the building to the point where it's cash flowing and making people money. So, that's awesome. That's good stuff. So, basis of that, or, as a follow-up, where can ladies learn more about what you're up to and just the really, really cool things you're doing?
So for our flipping business, we have a website. It's HouseItLook.com. And that's HouseItLook.com. For the apartment syndications, if anyone's interested, they can email us at bardowninvestments@gmail.com.
Awesome.
And we're also on social media as well, both Instagram and Facebook. So you can see all of our projects we've done to date. And feel free to shoot us any questions you have, and we'll be sure to answer them as quick as possible.
Awesome. And we mentioned a free gift when we were talking earlier. So tell the ladies a little bit about that. Not that it's certainly something that is a opportunity for them to learn. It's a video about the apps that you were using, right, when you were in Europe. Is that correct?
Correct. So I am part of Bigger Pockets group that does live streams, and on my last live stream, I did a piece on the apps that I use to operate our businesses. If you would like to view that live stream, and or if you like a cheat sheet of all the apps, you can get that information by either emailing at HouseItLook@gmail.com, and or you can see the video on Facebook, Bigger Pockets website, or on YouTube at Bigger Pockets, and just look for Ashley Wilson. And it's the last video that we've aired.
Great. That's great. We're going to be putting the link on our show notes, so you can go there and just click it and get the information from Ashley. And also on our show notes, you're going to have the links for our website, therealestateinvestor.com, where you can listen to this episode and the past episodes that we released. And if you want, you can also go to iTunes and subscribe, right, Liz? Subscribe to our channel so you receive all the heads up about the new episodes that are coming up. And we will really appreciate if you leave us a review on iTunes Tell us about what you like, what you dislike.
No, only nice things. I only want nice comments. No, I'm
Oh,
joking.
come on, really? We're that good.
Honest feedback. No, I know that's right.
Give us a feedback over there. I think it's important for us to start building a very strong community. The higher we are on iTunes, the goal here is to deliver this message to other women. So the higher we are on their rank, faster and more women will get the information that we are sharing here. And now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. Are you ready, Ashley?
Yes.
All right. So the first question is, what's the most transformational book you have ever read?
I have 2. So
Okay.
With respect to real estate investing, it's definitely Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I would challenge anyone who's read that book that wasn't the most transformational book. It's absolutely incredible book. But with respect to life in general, there's a book called Flatland. I actually had to email my high school theology teacher to find out the name of this book because I couldn't remember the title of the book, but I could remember the content. So the idea of this book is that it speaks in life in terms of shapes. So it says that if you are a point, you cannot imagine a line because the only thing that you know that exists is a point. Whereas if you're a line, you can imagine points because 2 points make up a line. And it goes so on and so on to say, like, a shape, you can't imagine a shape unless you are a shape. And therefore, if you're a shape, you can imagine lines and points, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. You get the idea.
Wow.
The reason why I like this book so much is because it really, I'm a very optimistic person. And I believe anything can happen if you put your mind to it and hard work and surround yourself with people who are supportive and provide the resources that you need to make whatever goal come to fruition. And I think that this book, it just, it really resonated with me because it made me think to myself, okay, well, if I can imagine it, that means it's possible. Because just like this book is saying that if you can imagine points, that must mean you're a line or a shape. You know what I mean? So basically, I just think of the world in that context, that whatever I can imagine can be done. And it's just a matter of when at that point. So those are the 2 books that really I absolutely love. But we could have a whole show on books that I love. Because
I need to do that.
I love that. So refreshing. The second question is, what's the most powerful routine you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
There are a lot of routines that I do, but most notably is having a time in the day where I just am removed from everything work-related and spend time with my family. I think this is critical, not as a woman, but as a person. I think everyone should be doing this. And personally, it's very hard for me. I'm a workaholic. I thrive off of checking my emails and getting things done. I love doing stuff like that. But the reason I do all that stuff is because I love my family and I want to spend time with my family. And at the end of the day, that is what's most important for me. So I constantly pick a time in the day where my cell phone's not around me, my computer's not around me. I'm like on the floor with my 2 little children and my husband, all 4 of us are on the floor with our dog. Like we just, love spending time together. And it's really important that you don't consider spending time with your family while your phone's going off and you're checking your phone all the time. You have to have a couple hours a day where everything is turned off, put away, and you really focus on your family.
Absolutely. The last question is, which women, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
I think a lot of people have said this on your show, and I couldn't agree more, is my mom. My mom has been a huge influence in my life as someone who's worked hard. When I grew up, my mom always said to me that the most important thing for her was us, my brother and myself. And if I met anyone who knew my mom and my mom was around, they would always comment about how they had never met anyone who was more who did more for their children than my mom did. She is a absolutely brilliant person, and she could have done a lot of things career-wise, but she chose a job that gave her the flexibility. I'm gonna like start crying.
You made me cry.
Yeah, we're all crying here.
She gave up pursuing that, and she always wanted to do certain things, and she gave up all of those dreams in order to take a job which she could attend every sport event we had, every play we had. My mom and my dad, they both worked growing up. My dad was self-employed, but my mom was not. And both my parents were there for every single thing that we could possibly have needed. Even when my brother and I went to college out of state, they drove up. I played Division I field hockey. They didn't miss a single game, home or away. They were there for 4 years, and for my brother too. And that is very rare to find. But the fact that she taught me how to appreciate that, that's more important, I think, than anything else, because she instilled the values of understanding how lucky I was to have someone like her in my life.
Wow, that's a legacy. That's a true legacy.
Yeah.
Very inspiring.
And you're carrying that on. So that's really special.
I hope I can. But
you are. You are. You're already doing it. You don't even realize it. Ashley, thanks so much for being on a show. Just the insight, you're so genuine, very authentic, and just sharing what has worked for you and suggestions for the ladies listening. So, and just the path you've taken. So thank you for your, just your being here with us and all the great ideas and ways you've shown up in the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you both again. This has been it's been enjoyable, first of all, but it's also an honor to be on this show. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing. This is fantastic. And I keep spreading the word. I actually spoke at a high net worth meeting last week, and I was speaking on partnerships and the importance of bringing women into investing. And I encouraged everyone there to become a part of your community. Unfortunately, there was less than 10% of women in the audience, but that was my point when I brought that up, was to say you need to bring your spouse or your friend or your sister, your mother, whomever to the table. Like, let's bring more women to the table and build this more.
Awesome. We really appreciate your support, and it's always good chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ashley. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.